All rise, here comes the judge. But it isn't Aaron Judge, it's not a big-time player. It is Joe Judge, the new coach of the New York Football Giants. Welcome everybody to another edition of Let's Be Frank About Sports. I'm your host, Frank Gino. So, as I just said, the Giants have decided to hire Joe Judge, and to me, it was a bit of a surprising move. I know that he was one of the guys that was interviewed, but I really didn't think that he was the top choice. I had just tweeted this morning at Frank D. Cugino that it seemed that when you're looking at Matt Rule get hired and you're looking at Mike McCarthy getting hired and all these different coaches that were coming off the board, Ron Rivera last week with the Redskins, it just seemed like the Giants were going to end up settling for a guy who really wasn't at the top of their list. And from the information that I gathered, it seemed like Matt Rule was the guy the Giants wanted. I mean, he's the guy who really fit the bill in my mind because of not only his experience as an offensive coach, but also his relative age. And I think that he would have been able to relate to Daniel Jones well and be able to relate to Saquon Barkley, had a little bit of history in the New York Giants organization. I felt like all those things definitely played into Rule's advantage, and it shows you what he's thought of in around the NFL with the Carolina Panthers, giving him the kind of offer that they did of 7 years. The exact number, 7 years, $60 million deal for a first-time NFL head coach. That's definitely quite a big number, and Matt Rule hasn't been around forever, but he has shown success at the college level, and the Panthers are definitely taking a chance. And honestly, I would have felt a lot better about a Matt Rule hire compared to a Joe Judge hire. So now, the next thing to look at is, why would the Giants hire Joe Judge? I think that's something very important to look at because when you first read it, you're like, Joe Judge, first of all, who is he? And who he is was a special teams coach with the New England Patriots. This year, got moved over to the wide receiver coach role, and now he's a head coach for the Giants. And similar to Matt Rule, Joe Judge is only 38 years old. So that is something that is in the Giants' advantage because I remember that was something they asked Dave Gettleman about at the press conference, looking at a college coach or a younger coach in general because of all the puppies, as Dave Gettleman always likes to say. This Giants team is a very, very young team, and also in their most important players, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, all the guys that they've drafted, DeAndre Baker and Dexter Lawrence and Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram. There's a lot of young players on this team. So you hope that Joe Judge, being only 38, he'll be able to relate to these players. Now, one of the big problems for me on the outside looking in is I've been trying to find some interviews of Joe Judge just to kind of get a sense of what kind of personality he is, because I believe that that's a really important role as far as coaching, especially a head coach, and also in New York. That is something that is even more important because you look at what happened this year with Adam Gase and Pat Shurmur. They did not relate well to the fan base. No question about it. I mean, even Adam Gase went out on not the highest note when he's like, oh, you got to ask Joe. I don't know about Le'Veon. Stuff like that. That isn't what Giant or Jet fans want to see because New York is so on top of you, and I get it. It's definitely overwhelming. There's probably a whole lot of pressure on these coaches, and it probably gets exhausting having the media always ask you so many questions all the time. But the thing is that is what comes with the job. And I was only able to see one interview of Joe Judge. I looked real quickly, and it was about Antonio Brown because he was the Patriots wide receiver coach this season. And Antonio Brown, it seems like a while ago, was on the Patriots for a little bit. And they were asking him about the Patriots controversy, and he was very, tight-lipped. He wasn't saying much. He was like, oh, we got to handle that. I'm not really worried about that. I'm just focused on the opponent. He didn't really say much. He didn't come across as a guy who really could command a locker room, as a guy that is a presence that really stands out. For some reason, I just get that sense from Ron Rivera. Something about him, he really stands out to me as just a strong personality that is a real good leader, that it's when he walks in the room, the coach is there. I just don't really get that sense with Joe Judge. The other two things that are at his advantage is that, if you look at his degrees, and one of the common things you'll hear about him is that Joe Judge is very smart. And that's important. You don't want a coach that's a dummy. That would definitely be a big-time problem. So Joe Judge is intelligent. That's good. That's definitely a step in the right direction for the Giants. Get a coach that is smart. I don't think that, Pat Shurmur wasn't smart or that Ben McAdoo wasn't smart. But, speaking of Ben McAdoo, to go along with what I said about personality, you think of the problems that the Giants had under Ben McAdoo, where it was like, there's locker room friction and guys aren't getting along. Look at what happened even just this past season with Janoris Jenkins and, not showing much effort in practice and tweeting and whatever. And it's just like, is Joe Judge going to be able to handle scenarios like that? I know Janoris Jenkins isn't on this team, but you never know who else Dave Gettleman might bring in, or all of a sudden who could become a problem, So those are things that you never could really plan out. But the other thing that's in Joe Judge's advantage is coming from the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots are always regarded as, the top organization in the league. They are the gold standard. Despite their cheating ways, they have shown the success and consistency of success, which is really, really important, something that these other organizations like the Giants have got to strive for. Now, the other problem, though, is that we have seen coaches that come from New England, they're not that good, So we've seen the way Matt Patricia, the Detroit Lions pairing has worked out, doesn't look very good. We saw Josh McDaniels and the way he wasn't as good with Denver and the way he backed out of the Colts job. So, as far as things like that, you don't exactly have the biggest track record of showing that, guys who come from the best coach in Bill Belichick come to the Giants, or come to any team for that matter, and are all of a sudden really good coaches. You don't really have that, but again, he's smart, he comes from a good organization, that's great. But there is another problem, and that is that he was a special teams coach and then a wide receiver coach. And the Giants, they struggled as far as protecting the young quarterback and, getting consistent offense, putting the ball in the end zone, finishing off drives, getting touchdowns. That's something the Giants struggle with. And they struggle with all areas of defense. And Joe Judge is not going to help with either one of those things. So there's two things that need to happen, or it could be one or the other. The Giants are going to need offensive and defensive coordinators. That has got to happen. And I just saw the report that the Giants are going to be talking to Jason Garrett about being an offensive coordinator. I think that would be a really, really awkward pairing. The reason why I say that is because just this morning, the Giants had requested permission to interview Jason Garrett, and I assumed it was going to be for the head coaching role. So that seems really puzzling, that here's the guy you're going to bring in as potentially the head coach, now all of a sudden is going to become the offensive coordinator. And the other problem I have is that Jason Garrett technically he has more of a track record than Joe Judge. He has, more of a personality than Joe Judge even. Like, he stands out. Like, when you look at the two guys together, Jason Garrett stands out more than Joe Judge because we've seen Jason Garrett on the sideline for, 8 years or something like that? And Jason Garrett has not had great success. I did not want him to be the head coach. I want to make that very clear. Because when the Giants were first interviewing him, I was like, this is not the answer at all. I don't really think that's the guy you go to. And you know what? It's been a while since Jason Garrett has been in the coordinator role, because as the head coach with the Dallas Cowboys, he was just there clapping. I mean, it didn't seem like he was putting much input into what the offense is going to do. And then it's like, if you do decide to bring in Jason Garrett, because it seems like the Giants do like him, since he was one of the guys that was being looked at for the head coach role, and now it's like, now we want to try to get for offensive coordinator. It's like, we got to get Jason Garrett on this team somehow. So I just think that that's going to be really weird for a coach who was a coach for a while and now just gets fired and then goes into the offensive coordinator role, compared to someone who's first-time coach. To me, it just seems a little awkward. That's all I'm going to say there. And again, it's like, there's no guarantee that Daniel Jones is going to fit in with Jason Garrett's system. And that's one of the things that I didn't like about firing Sherman. Not that Sherman should have stayed, but still, I just don't like having the young quarterback who is now in his second year having to learn a whole new offense. I just think that's a little hard for him to show improvement. And if the Giants do feel like Jason Garrett is the guy, he has to be the guy, and he has to be here for a long time, because like I've said in the offseason Giants podcast, the thing about a Daniel Jones or even a Sam Darnold is that they need time, and the sport is coming at them 100 miles an hour, and they just need the time to make the reads and make the right plays. And if Daniel Jones always has to learn a new system and has to learn new reads and new plays, he's never going to be able to fully learn. And I just think that Daniel Jones, he has to get more comfortable. This way he's not fumbling the ball as much. This way he's not throwing interceptions. I just think that, always changing the coaches, that's not a good thing. And I'm worried for Sam Darnold next year. Adam Gase is probably going to be gone. So that's going to be a third offensive system that Sam Darnold's going to have to learn to run. So I think that's a big problem. And then on defense, you're going to need a defensive coordinator. We haven't necessarily seen who the Giants are going to interview quite yet. I know they were talking about Wink Martindale as the potential head coaching candidate from the Ravens, but I don't think that Wink Martindale is going to leave the Ravens defensive coordinator to be the Giants defensive coordinator. That just doesn't seem likely at all. Now, a couple other problems I have is that you watched Mike McCarthy go off the board. You watched Ron Rivera go off the board. You watched Matt Rule go off the board. 3 guys who are better candidates than Joe Judge in my mind. And it's just like they didn't really seem like they gave the Giants much consideration. However, the one interesting thing is the report that Matt Rule called the Giants before taking the Panthers deal saying, listen, this is what Carolina's offering me. Match it so that I could come over to you guys and then, try to work something out there. Not necessarily that it's a guarantee Matt Rule will go there. And the Giants declined. So there's 2 things going on here. Number 1, the Giants are cheap, which I really hope is not the case because we see that too much with the Mets, and I don't think that's it. Could it just be that the Giants really liked Joe Judge? And one of the other things that I heard is that maybe since Joe Judge is under-the-radar guy, he's not a high-profile guy like a McCarthy or like a Ron Rivera or even a Matt Rule, that Joe Judge would be willing to listen to orders better from Dave Gettleman. It's a possibility, and this way Dave Gettleman has more of a call in personnel because I know that's something that Mike McCarthy wanted. So that would definitely make for an interesting dynamic. And it's just what's puzzling about this Joe Judge hiring. Like, there's so many different angles and, there's so much different reasoning. I mean, and I just hope that Gettleman and Mara and Tisch and the other guy, his name doesn't come to mind right now, that those guys in the interview room, just because Joe Judge is smart, they weren't, fooled by it. I really hope that is not the case because, you know what? That happened to Christopher Johnson with the Jets, and he just got fooled by Adam Gase saying, I'm a really good offensive mind, and I have really good plays and stuff like that, and I can help Sam Darnold. And the Jets were like, okay, you're hired. I really hope that Joe Judge wasn't like, I'm smart, so hire me. I really hope that isn't what happened. I'm joking a little bit as far as, what the actual dialogue was. I don't know. I was not in the interview room, unfortunately. I do not have that information to report to you guys. But still, I just think that this definitely was a very puzzling hire. And the thing for me is that, okay, you got your head coach, but you haven't really solved anything. The Giants still have so much work to do. They have to get the offensive coordinator. They have to get the defensive coordinator. They have to get a whole bunch of talent on the defensive side of the football. They still have to draft Andrew Thomas in the draft, which is what I hope they do because they have got to improve the offensive line. Again, Daniel Jones needs more time, especially having a new system he's going to run on offense. So I think all that is going to be interesting to follow. And again, it's just a very confusing day, and I didn't like how it just seemed like the Giants were not an appealing organization for the McCarthy or for the Ron Rivera. And the way it's this morning after the Panthers signed Matt Rule, the only 2 head coaching jobs were the Giants and the Browns. And the Browns, I mean, they've been known for dysfunction. Despite the talent they have on their team now, it's been a really long time since the Browns were in the postseason. A team that's okay, that's the Browns. That's a really solid organization that you could count on and things like that. You don't ever talk about them in that way. So the Giants, I mean, this is a team that they've won Super Bowls. They were, one of the model franchises in all of football. And that has not been the case in these past recent years because the team has just been so bad. The head coach has been a revolving door. And I don't know how long Joe Judge is going to last because, like I said, the one interview I saw from him, I did not like the personality. I just felt like if the Giants don't improve the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator and the talent on this team and the Giants start losing again, the media is going to be all over Joe Judge. And I just am curious to see how he's going to handle that, how he's going to react to that because the sense I get is not well. He's not going to be, doesn't cross as a guy that's going to go over well with the fan base and someone that, people could relate to and what have you and gives you informative information. And the thing also about Joe Judge is some people want to say, he has no coordinator role. He's never been an offensive coordinator. He's never been a defensive coordinator. And I agree with that. And then on the other side, people want to point to, look at John Harbaugh. And the thing about Harbaugh is that there was so much more to him than a special teams coach. He's a guy, kind of like I said with Rivera, where he commands the room. It's okay, coach is here. Harbaugh just has that, aura around him. And the way he handles the media is exceptional. Harbaugh, he'll take jabs at you. He'll say, people doubted us, but here we are. We have faith. We believe in our guys. And he gives you really good information. He's very honest, and he's just very open. He doesn't come across as a guy that's very moody and doesn't give you, much. And he's like Adam Gase, I just hate the impression I get from him. I just feel like Adam Gase has no interest in being there, doesn't want to talk to anybody, doesn't smile. He just sits there with the hat down so you can't see the crazy eyes and his big beard, and he's just like, I don't like Le'Veon Bell. And, he just doesn't bring across a positive message to me. Meanwhile, Harbaugh, I get that sense from him. I get the sense that he has a positive mindset. He says we have big faith, we have big trust. And when he says that is something so important because it shows how well he relates to his players, to Lamar Jackson, to Mark Ingram, and their whole saying of big trust. The way Harbaugh does it, you'll see him wear a Lamar Jackson sweatshirt. So, he has fun. Again, you get a good message from him. And again, that little interview I saw with Joe Judge, I know it's about something controversial, so he wasn't going to be in the best mood ever. But still, I just didn't like the way he reacted to that. And again, it's just like he's not used to this. Joe Judge has no experience of being interviewed by New York media and them being on top of you. He's going to come in here and be like, whoa, what the heck is this? If the team stays now, I got to deal with all these questions and crazy things flying at me. So I think that's going to make for a very interesting dynamic. And we'll see what happens, what else the Giants do as far as coaches and players and the draft and all the other great stuff going on with New York sports and all sports in general. Be on the lookout for a Brooklyn Nets podcast coming later tonight talking about their recent skid and all the struggles that they've been having. So again, be on the lookout for that. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.